welcome back to Fine Margins. This is your debrief on the Belgian Grand Prix. I'm Ben, and I'm with my co-host Bella. And we've just witnessed arguably one of the best races of the season. It was chaos, there was safety cars, overtakes, and the ending reminded us a little bit of that Abu Dhabi ending of last year. Sorry for any Lewis fans, that's some PTSD.
Yeah, so if we're looking at key things to think about from today, I think honestly it was a very bittersweet day for Mercedes. It very much was Abu Dhabi 2.0, and we'll go into that. It was a fairly exceptional strategy piece from the Red Bulls and performance from Max. Continued mistakes from Ferrari. I think this is becoming a trend.
So every week we
and frankly, this race was full of everything. It was quite something, and it only got better and better as we started hitting lap 40 plus. But before we begin, if you don't have time to watch this episode for 30 minutes and you just want to understand what happened in the race and the key themes, go check out our TikTok. We do 15-second summaries on there. That's also on our Instagram and on our YouTube shorts. If you're new to this channel, welcome to Fine Margins. If you're recurring, welcome back. Thanks for tagging along. As a brief intro into who we are, essentially we're Fine Margins because we believe that in the same way F1, you have to go that bit further, faster, smarter than your competitors. We want to bring you F1 content in the same way. Better, more concise, more research than anyone else. And wherever you're listening to us, click on that notifications and subscribe button so you can get all of the episodes we get, which are pre-race on Thursdays, post-race debriefs on a Sunday, and some political pieces. Our next one is on whether F1 is sexist. Touchy subject, which will go out on Tuesday morning. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode and start with, I think, the talk of the town, which is Mercedes. I think there's a lot to say here. Arguably, they had a great day on paper in the sense that their positions were Lewis on 4th and Russell started...
Sixth.
He started, Sixth? And they ended with Russell P2 and Lewis P4. But I think watching this race, there was this inclination that this was going to be the Mercedes win. This was going to be where the car clicked, and at Zandvoort especially, maybe a bit of a comeback for Lewis after Abu Dhabi, especially winning at Zandvoort. It didn't really go that way. So let's talk about it.
Well, sorry,
go ahead.
I think it's in total it's a disappointing weekend for Mercedes. I think they got very unlucky at qualifying.
Yeah.
And I think I think Lewis would have finished P3, maybe P2 in qualifying if it wasn't for the yellow flag from Sergio Perez. And I think Russell probably would have finished above Checo because Checo was really struggling this whole weekend. So they got really unfortunate qualifying. I think the race was good, but I think that little F up at the end with the strategy, that they either should have committed to keeping them both out or putting them both on softs, could have maybe cost them the last podium place.
Yeah, so a little bit of context for anyone that didn't watch the race. Here's a little snippet of actually what happened with Mercedes. So as they began the race, Russell didn't have a great start. But both Mercedes were on mediums, right? So it's this classic thing where it took their car some time, quite a few laps to warm up, but once they were warmed up, they were rapid, right? And I think they were going for a one-stop strategy, meaning they were only going to change their tires once, whereas most people or all other teams were going to change it twice. Now here lies the best thing and the worst thing about the Mercedes cars. Yes, they have really good duration and endurance. They have very low tire degradation, but it takes them quite a few laps to get that car into that sweet spot. Now, that was really working for them, right? And by lap 39, so almost over halfway through the race, Lewis still hadn't pitted, and he was on the fastest lap at the point. Between laps 39 and 44, he had gained 5 seconds off of Max and was gaining. And it was very much this question of when is Max going to pit? Like, I think Red Bull were under quite a lot of pressure with their strategy because they were thinking, Lewis is going to come out before us. Like, will we have time to make up that gap before the end of the race? But everything kind of went south at lap 45, where there was a virtual safety car. And up to this point, Mercedes did have the best strategy. And the virtual safety car wasn't a problem the first time, and it was due to Tsunoda stopping on the track. Then Tsunoda went back into the pits. His engineers messed about with his seatbelt and tried to fix his tire because he said it was off or not on properly. Then he went back onto the track for about 100 meters and stopped again for another virtual safety car. At this point, there was a 13-second gap between Hamilton and Max, and Tsunoda retired. So at that point, Mercedes double stacked onto mediums. So they brought in both drivers. So they were on now fresh tires. Max was on fresh tires. And they go out again. And again, Mercedes' lap time was getting better and better. They were getting faster and faster, and you're thinking, okay, they might overtake Max. Well, maybe Hamilton will. Like, again, there was this hope, but Mercedes did say, like, that VSC stuffed us. Like, the virtual safety car ruined our strategy because Max is on new tires. The whole point was, like, he was going to have to pit, and I would have overtaken him, but anyways. But it was still going well. But then at lap 56, right? So under 20 laps from the end of the race, Bottas has a DNF.
Another Ferrari engine power unit. But
another Ferrari engine. Exactly. And Max goes into the pits and Hamilton does not pit under this virtual safety car. Meaning Max is on soft tires, brand new ones, and Hamilton is on 10-lap-old mediums. Does it remind you of those final stints in Abu Dhabi last year? I think it does. At this point, the safety car ends, the restart begins, and Lewis literally says, there's no way I'm going to keep this car behind me. Within the first corner, Max has overtaken Lewis. Lewis comes onto the radio saying, I'm so pissed. I can't believe you guys. You have no idea how pissed I am. Because I think in his head, it was simply just a replay of Abu Dhabi. It's like, you left me vulnerable with old tires. You didn't pit me. You pitted Russell. So it's not even that it was Lewis, Russell, Max. So then Russell could have held Max up. It was Lewis, Max, Russell. And Russell was never going to catch Max. And Lewis had old tires. Plus, he knew the car was going to take time to warm up because they'd have this virtual safety car for so long. And so Russell overtook Lewis, Leclerc overtook Lewis, and Lewis went from a position of maybe winning the race to being fourth, and Max had a comfortable lead again. And is this a replay of Abu Dhabi? Was the Mercedes strategy the same thing where they left Lewis vulnerable and they didn't react as well as the Red Bull did to the virtual safety cars?
Well, yes and no, because I think it's worth remembering in Abu Dhabi, Lewis was on like 40-lap old hards.
Yeah.
Or something. He went on a disgustingly long stint, and still nearly overtook Max. Once he was behind him in that race. But there's also, he was in a much faster car than he was right now, because I think it's clear to see that the Red Bull car is the quickest car in all, it seems like, all the circuits right now. No matter what type of track they go to, they're just stupid fast compared to everyone else. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities. But I think the difference is this time they had the chance to pit him, you know?
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Yeah. And they pitted Russell.
Split the strategies. But Russell kind of called the strategy himself, because he's a smart driver, and he wanted to optimize his chance at the win. But I also think as a team, if you're in a point where Mercedes is right now, you haven't won a race this year. You're not looking like you're gonna win the constructors. Obviously, you're not looking like the drivers aren't really competing for standing position. they should have put their eggs in one basket to try and get that win. And I think to do that, they would
Yeah.
have to sacrifice Russell a little bit to get that, obviously, that first win of the season. But they didn't. They kind of
Yeah.
split the strategies. They let the drivers race, which is what Mercedes do sometimes. And it's worked for them in the past. But obviously, it left Lewis very vulnerable. But I think Lewis made a slight mistake in that where he started the race again when the safety car ended.
Around the corner,
He
yeah.
started around the corner right at the start of the one and only straight on the track, and I think he probably should have got the race going a bit further down the straight because he had obviously Max right behind him. He gave him a tow all through that final corner, and the Red Bull have obviously disgusting straight line speed at the moment, so I think that was probably his slight mistake. But yeah, I think Mercedes probably, for a team that did outstanding strategy call everywhere, I think they may have messed that one up a little bit if they wanted to get that win.
Yeah, absolutely. So a sad, sad day, and I think it was pretty rare to hear Hamilton as annoyed as he was. He usually is a little bit more measured, but honestly, I think he thought he might be going for the win, and I think, yeah. So on these points, though, a few like conspiracy theories, which I'm just gonna throw out there because it's fun. Okay, two things. Did Red Bull sabotage Sergio yesterday on purpose so that people couldn't complete Q3? And number two, did Red Bull see that Tsunoda went in, tell him to go out, and bring the opportunity of another safety car just so Max could pit because they knew that Mercedes were going to win? Like, is there a case whereby Christian Horner's hatred for Mercedes is so great that he would go to such lengths of using their second team to generate a result that they wanted? Just mix up the pot a little bit.
I think probably. I think it's all fun and games. I think probably not this time because it's like, if Mercedes gets a win, who cares? You still got both championships in the bag. But there was a conspiracy theory of Abu Dhabi. I don't know if you remember, but Checo had to retire in the race. And I think they were going to do that, but make him retire on track and cause a safety car. But obviously Latifi said, screw that, I'm going to do it myself. And became the renowned legend he is known as around the paddock now. But I think this one's probably that's too much risk involved just to thwart Mercedes. But he does really hate them, so you never know.
Yeah. I've been told actually by someone that we're quite biased to Mercedes on this podcast. So you know what? I will preface, like, I am a Mercedes fan. That doesn't mean I can't appreciate what other teams do, but fair enough. Yeah, we are. Well, at least I am. So, okay. Yeah, you're a Haas fan. You're a Haas fan. I'm a exactly. But people have made the comment of like, do you kind of seem biased to Mercedes? So I just thought I'd bring up these little conspiracy theories just to see what people react. So that's a nice little segue into Red Bull. Honestly, I got to give them credit. Notably, their chief strategist. I think, considering Max went from softs to mediums to hards to softs and did 4 pit stops and ended first, and just how well timed they were, and obviously how he can execute on each of the tires. Honestly, I wasn't sure they were going to win. And I think they were worried about Lewis gaining. And yeah, it's true, the safety cars did help them, but I think it's not so much the case of the safety cars. I think they just reacted better to the safety cars and what they were capable of. Having said that, I think Sergio is, I think now for a few weeks, has had not bad performances, but it's different. And I don't know why that is. I honestly don't know why, though. Like, this is such a new problem. I don't think it was the issue last year. I don't think it was the issue the year before. Like, but he seems a little bit disenfranchised from the team, and I I'm not sure if that's because he's resigned to the fact he is a number two driver. I'm not sure if it's because he's had opportunities to win races this year and they sabotaged him. Maybe, maybe I'm not sure what it is. Maybe the novelty of joining Red Bull is worn off. But maybe the development of the car is just going away the way he's driving. But it's weird to see him, I think, to the extent to which he's behind.
Well, I think it feels a little bit like Bottas last year.
Yeah.
When it's kind of like, everyone remembers that point last year when Bottas was racing George Russell, who was in the Williams, in Pete, I can't remember which race, and he was just struggling towards the end because it's kind of like, I'm not like, and he said it himself, he really struggled with being beaten by Lewis a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if he said being beaten by Lewis, but not winning the championships, which I guess ultimately,
well, I think
being beaten by Lewis, but yeah, he's been really struggling. I think probably Horner's thinking, all the Red Bull teams are thinking we may have given him the contract prematurely, his extension after his win in Monaco. But then again, it seems like everyone struggled in that second Red Bull seat since Ricciardo left. But I was thinking, just going back to the Red Bull strategy, firstly, flawless strategy, as per usual. And I think two things on that. Firstly, they were really
the work
smart.
of a woman.
They did. Their chief strategist. I can never remember her name.
See, this is why you need more women in F1. Like, clearly the results are coming,
But
segue to our other episode.
They managed to keep a new pair of softs because of how they organized their tyre strategy in qualifying. So they got to have in the race, firstly, an extra pair of softs than everyone else that was unused, which is brilliant because obviously the softs were rapid, and I think they started the race on the fresh softs. And secondly, I mean, if you just think of Red Bull this year, I can't think of a race this year which they've lost on strategy. I think they've lost races because the other cars were just faster. They were better suited for the tracks. They had better tyre degradation. But I can't think of a race this year which they've lost because they fucked up tyre strategy or they had a bad pit stop or something. And I think you can think is obviously at Ferrari, and I think nearly all the races they've lost is because of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think on the Sergio point though, I think something that was quite telling, for example, was yesterday in quali when in Q3 Sergio obviously hit the wall. And then the camera panned to celebrations in the Red Bull paddock, which one of your drivers is in the wall and one of them is P1. Do I have examples of other teams doing that? No, but I think it's very much this thing, if you look at Max's career and childhood, he's been a Red Bull driver since he was 17. He's been Christian Horner's golden child for that long. He can do no wrong. You can just see, like, even when you look at the camera of like Helmut, Horner and Verstappen, like, it's a Verstappen team. The team is built for Verstappen. You can spin it however you want, and Red Bull fans, you can have a go at me for saying that, but it is. And so I think any second driver at some point, you're gonna be a bit like, hello, like, and so if Sergio is like that, then whatever.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the reasons, frankly. Like, I just don't think it's easy to it's not just a matter of the competition. It's not just a matter of losing to your teammate. I just think Red Bull don't, like, it's a Max show and you're there to support Max, and that's just how it is.
I think that's true from what you say, but I think it's also slightly unfair. But I think they do have a specific culture that works for specific drivers. I do believe they have gotten worse with Max, because they really do love the kid. And it seems like all the engineers, they just love him to death. But I also think if you look at their most successful drivers in the last 10, 15 years, it was him, it was Ricciardo, and then it was Vettel. And they all have that kind of free spirit energy about them.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the type of driver you need to be. And you go to Checo, he's like 30 something. He's got kids. He's married. he's not the type of driver that fits into that culture. He's a bit like, Gasly. Gasly just doesn't really feel Red Bull. Just who he is as a person.
Do you think Lando is Red Bull? I think that could be
That's
quite
a good
interesting.
question, actually.
Lando was to jump from McLaren into the second Red Bull seat, especially because him and Max are the closest in the paddock. We're taking a massive freaking tangent, but who cares? Like,
no, that's not happening because Lando's got like a lifetime
long contract. Yeah,
but yes,
that would be such a curveball.
Lando does kind of fit into that vibe. Lando's a bit like Ricciardo, the type of energy they give off. So I think he would fit into that type of team. But yeah, I do think there's a specific type of driver that fits into that culture. And not everyone can merge into it. And I think, again, like Checo, he's 32, he's Mexican. He comes from he's a different type of person. He's got kids, he's married. So I think he struggles probably in that team. And I don't think the car's not that suited for him. That snappy oversteer car.
But yeah. So segueing back into the race, Ferrari. Listen, statistically, P2, P3 start, P3, P8 finish. You have a fast car, but it comes back to the same thing that is a consistent trend, which is they don't get the basics right. I mean, Sainz had a 12.7 second pit stop, which he never recovered from, frankly. And then you had the wheel gun incident where Checo went over their wheel gun because they left it out. That could have caused a puncture for Checo. And then they had an unsafe release with Sainz where Alonso had contact with him because they just like left. It's like they don't look around. It's like they don't like for a second go, oh, like I don't I'm out of. I think most commentators on this are just like, and then I have a personal issue with Binotto's PR woman because someone is advising him to like act as though everything's fine. Someone's advising him to be like, we've made no mistakes. And I'm kind of like, do you think we're stupid? Like, just acknowledge it. Just like acknowledge, yes, operationally we have problems. Like, I find it so bizarre how he legitimizes it. I don't care what happens on the inside. Like, if publicly you're legitimizing the amount of ridiculously basic mistakes you're making, what does that look like internally to the team? Oh no, it's fine, like it's not really that big a mistake. Like, I don't know. So a funny thing was though, and where I think people think that Ferrari are not irrelevant, but in the race it was Lewis, Leclerc, Max, right? Max first, Lewis third. They weren't showing the gap between Lewis and Leclerc. They weren't saying, oh, Lewis gaining 2 seconds a lap on Leclerc. They were showing the gap between Lewis and Max. As in, Lewis is 13 seconds behind Max. Almost like Lewis will get to Leclerc, but to be honest, he'll probably have DNF'd or crashed by that point, so let's not really consider it. Like, I found that super interesting.
You did not hear them speak about the Ferraris.
You didn't hear anything about Ferrari, and their pace was off, right?
Yeah.
Even from the beginning, Max had such a quick lead so quickly, and it's like... Yeah,
and on the, especially at the start of the race, it was Leclerc reaction time was slightly faster, and he got to top speed slightly faster than Max, but still it was like a 1 point second lead of Max, like after like 2 laps.
Yeah.
But I also think again, beating on the dead horse of the Ferrari strategy. It was firstly leaving your wheel gun out and having another car run over it. I can't remember the last time I've seen that in F1. That is incredible. But also in terms of like the missing tire for the pit stop.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it's either the engineers just thoroughly messed up, but that seems very unlikely because even for Ferrari, how simplistic it is, because you have your 4 tires on a shelf together, so it's like to not take one out just seems incredibly dumb. Or the more likely scenario was that the strategist called the pit stop too late. And it didn't give.
That's what happened.
Yeah, it didn't.
That's what happened.
Enough time to get
That's the thing. They don't look up. They don't look up as to the race. They don't talk to each other. Like, you need to give your engineers enough time to get the tire. Like, don't call the. Oh, it's just so
So,
mess.
you
It's
know what?
just so basic.
Every week we just batter Ferrari as we should batter them, but it's it's not even a
I think we
conversation
should
topic
just say
anymore.
like, I think we should just say Ferrari, same as last week. Like, just we don't
Exactly.
even need to cover it anymore. But we are covering it for those of you that are new and maybe don't know. But just so you know, Ferrari have consistently made these mistakes, and by virtue of that, have not put them in position to win. Anyways, moving on. Alpine, they had a good day.
They did. They did. Especially for having started 12th and 13th, I believe. Um, to have both drivers finish in the points, with Fernando at 6th and Ocon at 9th. And Fernando finishing above Norris, so that means they've extended their gap to McLaren. Um, I think it's been a very good day for them. And they didn't have a fight between Ocon and Fernando, which is also good. But I also feel for Norris and McLaren because, I mean, Lando is carrying that team at the moment. Lando has that car in 7th spot. He finished the race 7th. And Ricciardo's in 17th. And it's just each week, you just look at Daniel and be like, what? I mean, what the hell has happened to you? Because he can barely get the car out of Q1. He can barely finish in the top 13, 14, let alone in the points. And it just hurts to see it, how bad these poor. And you were hoping at least after all this contract talk came out about how McLaren had cut him from his contract and they're going to pay him like 21 million. And also, what came out is that they were talking to Piastri quite early on into the year, so they basically lost faith in him very early on. So you're hoping that would spike some sort of, reaction from Ricciardo to bounce back a little bit and prove people wrong, but nothing. He seemed to have gotten worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll cover the kind of updates in the driver transfer market at the kind of end of this episode. So, Aston Martin,
Not bad.
what do we think?
I mean, Lance Stroll finished P10, and he's got 5 points, and all those points have come from finishing P10. But it's actually not. It was
Interesting.
actually quite a bad race for Lance Stroll, because every other time he's finished P10, he started like P17, P18. But today he started P10 and finished P10, and I think
Oh,
that's
fair.
disappointing by the overtaking
Yeah.
standards of Aston Martin, and how they normally overtake like 12 people in a race, starting from like 25th on the grid, to get to that P10 spot. Now he started P10 and finished P10. I'm quite disappointed actually.
Yeah.
Um,
We
but
obviously
good.
saw the battle between Alonso
Yeah,
and Norris as well.
yeah. But they looked. It's funny that Aston Martin, because they looked really rapid at times. Especially for like obviously Lance Stroll got the car into Q3, but didn't get to run a lap in Q3 because the car had some technical
Yeah.
issues. But also, Seb went out in Q1, but that was because of a mistake on his part. And I think he set the fastest first sector on his lap, but then he had a snap of oversteer, I think, and it went off into the gravel, so that obviously killed his lap, and then that in Q1. But the Aston Martin looked rapid at times um, this weekend. So I think they'll be a little bit disappointed to only come away with 1 point.
Absolutely. And then we have the Alfa Romeo. So another not great weekend for Valtteri Bottas and another bit of Ferrari engine unreliability. The funniest thing about that incident was that when Valtteri was stationary, Latifi was still behind him, and it took him half a lap of driving to catch up to a stationary car, which I don't know. When we talk about the driver transfer market, maybe that's something to consider. And then, of course, you had Haas, who, through what they did, kind of screwed Mick over.
With the pit stop, they gave him a 12-second pit stop, I think, which is disappointing considering he started P8. He didn't have a great start, so he ended up going to 10 after the first couple laps, and then the pit stop just ruined his race. Yeah, which is disappointing. I think the Haas team will also be disappointed because all their upgrades made them closer, made their car a lot more like Ferraris, and the
Yeah.
Ferrari car seems a lot slower for the second half of the season.
Yeah.
So they are probably a bit disappointed in that. But yeah, it's a shame. You wanted Mick to get some more points, especially since he's out of contract. And so, he needs to up that performance if he wants to get a seat. It's unlikely that he'll come back to Haas, considering he's just left Ferrari. And I thought he might go to Alpine, but apparently they're negotiating with Gasly to get him out of his contract. So that kind of only really leaves him with the Alpha Tauri seat if Gasly leaves, or the Alfa Romeo seat, but it's unlikely that Zhou leaves. But yeah, it's disappointing for the Haas. Obviously, the Steiner ship is not sailing strong right now.
Great. Now, ahead of us quickly going through the updates on the driver championship and the constructors championship, little update on the driver transfer market. So obviously Piastri has officially been confirmed as McLaren's driver for next year, and some interesting things have come out about his engagements with Alpine and why he left. We will break that down in some short videos, but essentially, yeah, it just feels like that relationship was falling apart. Apparently, Piastri had been quite clear with the team that he was leaving from very early on, even pre-Alonso's departure, but almost Alpine were trying to bully him into a position of having to concede by doing things like the tweet, or by doing things like the internally when they would make announcements that he's joining and he's not. And I think the thing is like, it's unfair because I've heard some things that Piastri's getting a bad reputation as to like doing something that, to a team that raised him. And it's a bit like it's business. Like, if you're in a job for 20 years, it doesn't mean you have to stay for them for the next 20 years. Like, if you get a better offer, if you get more money, if you get better training opportunities, you should move. He's a young driver with a lot of potential. Like, frankly, like, if his management and him think his best decision as his starting seat in F1 isn't with Alpine, nobody should be there to say like, oh, well, that's a bit like arrogant of him, he's never driven an F1 car. It's a bit like, well, no, Alpine had the opportunity to keep him. Alpine had two great drivers with Alonso and Piastri and lost both of them. So actually, who does that speak to? The massive organization that is Alpine, or this young, how old is he, like 18?
No, he's a little old. I think he's 19.
Yeah, but this young boy, yeah, okay, like he has some management, and then it was like, oh, but did you see his tweet? It's, well, what else was he going to say? Like, I'm not driving for Alpine, Absolutely. And I think some bad press has been pretty unwarranted for Piastri. I think like it's not your heart and your mind. Like, it's a business. Do what's right for you, right? Like.
And I think just to weigh on that, firstly, I think a large part of this difficulty with Alpine and having lost Fernando and Piastri comes from him giving Ocon such a long contract. Yeah. I know he's a French driver for a French team, but I feel I've voiced it before. I feel like Ocon's a very average driver, and he's never beaten a teammate before. And I don't think he's ever done anything to warrant the contract he got from Alpine. So I think that's a problem because obviously they got one seat locked up and they can't really get out of that. But I also think secondly, it seems like a lot of people are leaving the Alpine management, the Alpine team, over problems with the management. With obviously Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Alan Prost left them after he was an advisor of the team. So it seems like they can't seem to hold people down. And especially, Piastri seems like he's a very good kid. And he's also got Mark Webber as his kind of like coach.
Who's a great agent. His agent.
Who's obviously a very experienced driver. Formula One driver. Been in the game for a long time. Nearly won world championships with Red Bull. A fantastic dude as well, apparently. So he's there as his agent advising him. So obviously they must have picked up on something. Because he's leaving, like, Piastri's leaving a good team. Alpine's, at least record-wise, they're fourth in the standings right now. They've got a fast car. He's leaving a good team to go to another good team in McLaren. But, it's strange leaving a team that you've been in the academy for such a long time, stuff like that. And to leave that situation, then really must be something wrong with the organization. It's something that's not really come out in the public yet. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think it's glad it's resolved. I am happy he's driving at McLaren. I think that's a really interesting pair next year, Lando and Piastri. They've got
Puts Lando under pressure. Actually, Lando is yet to
Yeah.
be, I guess, like competitive with a partner,
Yes,
a teammate.
no, he was.
I mean, yeah, with Sainz, it was
Beaten
there.
by
It was
Sainz, but
there.
he's also very young. I don't think Ricciardo
Yeah.
gave him the challenge he wanted. But I also do think Lando he has been driving brilliantly this year, considering how fast that car is. But yeah, I mean they've got. I mean, firstly, I think I've always thought Lando's a terrific driver, like world championship material underneath the right car. And obviously we haven't seen Piastri drive yet, but if he's as good as advertised from his F3 and F2 records, then he should be at that type of elite level of driver once he gets to his prime. So they've got a potentially very dangerous driving combo
Wrong team. Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on. So Williams, the seat to go next to Alex Albon is between apparently Sargent and Latifi, of course, is still in the mix. Pierre Gasly is being rumored to be the person replacing in Alpine next to Ocon, and there's still no confirmation on Tsunoda's contract, nor on Joe's, obviously nor on Latifi's. So yeah, exciting updates still to come.
I do think. I mean, I think if AlphaTauri lose Gasly, they're not going to lose Tsunoda. But I think that announcement will probably come after whatever happens with Gasly. But yeah, that's everything with the driver market. I think in the standings after the Dutch Grand Prix, nothing much has really changed. Leclerc took back his second spot over Perez, but they're equal on points. He just has more wins. Russell overtook Sainz for fourth spot. And in terms of positioning of constructors, nothing's changed. Red Bull's got a much bigger gap over Ferrari. They basically confirmed that championship, and Alpine have extended their lead on McLaren.
That is it for the Dutch Grand Prix. What a weekend it has been, and we will catch you back at the pre-race brief for Monza, which will be out this Thursday, and ahead of that we will be releasing the episode on whether F1 is sexist. Thank you very much for listening. This is Fine Margins.